Hey, did it rain last night? Did you guys get some rain? Did you hear the thunder? I love thunderstorms, and I love sleeping to thunderstorms. If you tell me it's raining and thundering out, I can go sleep at any time of the day. So last night, get this picture. Here's a TV screen, a split screen. On one side is old Creighton, and it's starting to thunder out, and I can hear the rain, and I'm just snuggling in. And on the other side is Donnie with eyes wide open saying, no more lightning strikes, no more lightning strikes, no more lightning strikes. So he showed up this morning, and he had to run around early getting more troubles fixed. So again, if you have a choice, this is just a little PSA announcement. If you have a choice, if your house or business can either get hit by lightning or not hit by lightning, choose not getting hit by lightning, because we've got quite a few things we're still working on. Hey, we've been doing the whole book of Colossians for the whole summer. I think today and maybe next week, if not 2 more weeks, but probably next week we'll wrap it up. And for those of you, because I got yelled at last week, for those of you who are saying, Creighton, you're supposed to be like this, high and tight. I know, it's okay. This just feels better right now. So we're good. The book of Colossians, so we've been studying it, and I love this little book. It's one of my favorite little books. Paul's writing to a church, small church, maybe 30 people, a couple of house churches, folks that he didn't plant that church. And he's just reminding them, the first chapter and a half, he's just reminding them of the gospel. And remember, the gospel isn't an it, it's a who. The gospel is Jesus. The good news of Jesus Christ. So when we live the gospel, we're living Jesus, right? So the gospel is studying Jesus. So if you want to get to know Jesus, you spend time with him studying his word, praying his word, talking to him, having conversations, being around other Jesus followers. And this is how you grow in the faith. If you're the same Christian today that you were a year ago, you need to do some reflection on why that is. Because then the second half of the book is, if Jesus is your Lord and Savior, you should be living your life differently. There should be growth happening. Am I the only one that did this? When you were a child and you'd go to like family events or something, did you have aunts and uncles that would walk up, look at you and say, oh, you're beginning to look so much more like your dad? Did anyone have that happen? Yeah? Why, Kurt? Why did they think you look like my dad? Just seeing if you're awake. But we did that, right? People think you're their dad or your mom because you're growing into that image. And we're supposed to be growing into the image of Jesus. And so one of the things he's saying is that the best thing you can do is your family. In a world that's black and white, live in color. Jesus should make such a difference in your family that the gospel is always being preached, even if you're not using words. When everyone else is stressed and they see the calmness in you, when they see the love in you, when they see this rhythm of harmony within you, they're going to wonder why. Because of Jesus. So he said, the best thing, I wanted you to live differently in all aspects of your life. And if you do so, you should see that in your families. And so he has this famous text. Wives, submit to your husband as is fitting into the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Let's just pause there for a second. We're going to deal with this text more completely in a moment. But this word submit, we have a hard time with this word in America because we're rugged individualists. But we remind ourselves that this whole concept of being an individual, an individualism, it's 100 or 200 years old. It's new. For centuries, being that rugged individualist was actually looked at somewhat negatively because you broke the harmony on the fabric of society, of rhythm and harmony and community. And it was viewed as self-centered and narcissistic. I think the better word, if we were writing it today, would be the word respect. Wives, respect your husband as fitting in the Lord. Love your wives and do not be harsh with them. That word love. The word love is not intimacy or even affection. that word love is bringing the best out of them. So let's go back into Genesis. Genesis chapter 1. God created male, female. He created Adam, man, humanity, and Eve. The word for Eve is life. So he created a man, and now he created a woman, somebody with a womb. Woman, it's in the name. And so he didn't, when he says in the scriptures, he created a helpmate. The helpmate wasn't man here, woman here. It wasn't Batman and Robin. For the Hebrew people, it was male, female. And they combined to be one. I'm finding your weaknesses and strengths, and I will make you better because together we're one. And so what they're saying is, woman, respect your men, and men, bring out the best in your women. Bring out their best leadership skills, their best skills that they have of passions and to be who they are. Help them be the best that they can be. And then he says, children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. Fathers, do not embitter your children, or they will become discouraged. This word for parents in the Greek and this word for fathers are oftentimes two different words, but they're oftentimes interchangeable. In the Latin and the Greek, and certainly in the Jewish mindset, and in the early church, fathers took a primary role in not only the belief of their faith, but the change of behavior. Belief and behavior was modeled by dads. In the Jewish faith and in the early church, there wasn't a separation of church and state. Everything was of God. You studied the economy, you studied God. Everything was of God. So what would happen is you had Jerusalem, had the temple, and then think of a mega church with satellite churches. All over you had the synagogues and all these little churches with rabbis. And the dads would drop their kids off, and the kids would learn all about their mathematics and their languages and everything. But they would also be learning about God. And then the dads would pick them up and take them home, and dads would model this behavior and belief. Dads would model how to worship, how to spend time with God. Now, in today's society, what they tell us is this. The psychologists tell us that women tend to model the beliefs to a child. Until that child gets to be about 8th grade, which is when confirmation tends to be, and then after they get confirmed, they have the behavior of dad playing golf on Sunday morning. So they believe in mom's God while they do dad's behavior. Dads, we've kind of dropped the ball on this. We've dropped the ball a little bit on this. So what Paul is doing in this text is he's hitting three big emotions and issues that the early church were convinced God gave humanity as a gift. And the first one's sexuality. So sexuality, they believed, was a gift given to God by humanity, male and female, for not only procreation, but pleasure. They believed it was given to us for pleasure and procreation. Now, here's the thing. Remember, this was about 2,000 years ago, right? Can you believe this? It's hard. In those days, there were actually people who abused sexuality. There were people who would be married and have extramarital affairs. There would be people who would have sex outside of marriage with multiple people. One time in Corinth, there was a man who married a woman. He already had a son, so this is the stepmom. The son was having inappropriate relations with the stepmom while she was still married to the dad. Can you believe that 2,000 years ago, people were having inappropriate relationships? And do you know what else? Emotion. Emotion was a gift. This one cracks me up because I'm so glad we've grown. Here's the thing. There would be people who would go off to work and smile and laugh, ha, 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 and have fun with everybody in the workplace. And then the moment they came home, they would kick the dog and start barking orders to everybody and be grumpy. They would unload all their emotions on their family. Or there would be spouses that would stay home and would just simmer with anger of why do you get to leave the house and I've got to stay home with the kids again. Or, can you believe this? I'm sure it was a Jewish donkey or a camel. They didn't really have camels, so they probably had donkeys. They would pick up the kids from synagogue, and the kids would be having so much fun with all of their friends, and the moment they got on the back of the donkey and mom said, "How was your day?" they all of a sudden, harumph, and wouldn't talk to their parents. There were people back then who didn't know how to control their emotions. I'm so glad we've grown. Or language. God gave us this beautiful gift of language to encourage each other, to exhort one another, to communicate so we could do wonderful and beautiful things together through the gift of language. But back then, they had people who actually told falsities of one another. They would lie. They would tear one another down behind their back. They would gossip. All of this is connected in the text we're looking at. And that's why Paul said earlier, put off the old self, the old practices, the old Creighton, and put on the new self, the new practices, the new Creighton, that lets the Holy Spirit come inside and change and transform, and I work with God, and that's being renewed. And how am I being renewed? By spending time with God. But it's a process, not perfectly, but progressively. In other words, every day I'm getting more and more like God, but every day I have challenges, and there are days when I don't do very well. I don't know about you, but there's days I miss the mark. There's days I sin, and that's why we have God's grace to continue to pick ourselves up, dust off the dust from our pants and say, okay, Lord, forgive me. So then we get into the crux of what this text is about. Wives, submit to your husband. We already saw that in the Greek, it's subject or respect your husbands. Now, my mom, I love my mom, I love my dad. My mom died in 2010. My dad was a pastor. My mom was a pastor's wife. Hence, they were married, my dad and my mom. My mom and I used to have interesting conversations, and she would say, I don't really care for Paul. I'd say, why? And she'd say, because he's sexist. And I'd say, no, he's not. And she'd point to texts like this. And I said, Mom, you're not understanding the historical background. You're looking at this from 21st century eyes, not going back into the scriptural eyes. You understand whether it was Latin, Greek, Jew, it didn't matter. Wives were supposed to submit to the husband because they were chattel, they were property. They were going to submit one way or the other. The question of this text isn't submit. The question is what's the condition of your heart going to be? So you always start with context. And so that's Paul's asking, what is the condition of your heart? This is what makes this text so beautiful and what makes it so intriguing. If you just focus on submitting, you've missed it. It's written in the middle voice. It's subjecting oneself voluntarily. As in Jesus is submitting to the Father's will, this exhortation is balanced with the instruction of husbands to love their wives. I'm loving you, pulling out the best in you, helping you become the best that you can become, and you are respecting me. Because the truth of the matter is every single man wants to be respected. There's always somebody bigger, faster, stronger, somebody who makes more money, somebody who's better looking. But can you not look past me and look at that with wantful eyes? Can you look at me as the man? Can you just look at me and start to look for things that you enjoy about me? Because I'm going to tell you something. There's no such thing as falling in love or falling out of love. I didn't trip one day and land on Karen and say, oh, I guess we're in love. You don't fall in love and out of love. Every day you make a choice to be in love. Wherever your relationship is right now, it's based upon the choices that you've made to get there. And it's not too late to change those choices. Every day you wake up, because there's this thing called infatuation. It's usually about 2 years. After about 2 years, you look at each other and you say, oh my, I didn't realize you could make those kind of noises. I didn't realize you could smell that way. It's waking up every morning and looking at your spouse and saying, today I choose to look past all of the things that annoy me and to find the thing that I love and to exhort you and to encourage you and to help you be the best that you can be because you're loving me and you're doing the same thing. And you're beginning to trip over one another. See, in Paul's day, there was someone with power and someone who was dutiful. Someone was a master and someone was a slave. Someone was in charge and someone was the charge. And instead of lines of power, Paul is drawing lines of mutuality. So the way we treat each other is the way that we honor the Lord or not. One does not have all the power and one has no power. There is mutual what? Respect and love. Yeah. I have a friend my age, superly gifted guy. When he went to seminary, because he's a pastor, when he went to seminary, handsome, rugged guy, good-looking, athletic guy, felt the call to ministry, went into the ministry, met somebody while in seminary. She knew he was going to be a pastor. So they got married. Within 1 year, she divorced him. Not because she didn't love him, she did. She just said, I don't want the responsibility of being a pastor's spouse. Folks, this is a healthy church. I couldn't be more proud of you. I couldn't thank you enough. So much so we've stayed here over 25 years. We know that we're blessed to be with you. There are churches that are not kind to pastors or their spouses. And she just didn't want anything to do with that. So here's what he did. He decided he wanted to get remarried because it's hard. Think of this. You feel called into the ministry and your resume now has right off the bat divorced. So he met somebody. She fell in love with him. But because he was overcompensating, all of a sudden he acquiesced everything to her. And she wanted this egalitarian relationship, but she said, you're just acquiescing everything. These are his words. He told me this story. She signed them up to take ballroom dancing classes because in the back of her mind, she thought, he has to lead. Except he didn't. They got out on the dance floor, and it was awkward, and it was a mess because he was acquiescing to her. And finally, the instructor came, and he said the instructor looked at him and said, somebody has to lead. And then looked at him and said, usually on the dance floor, it's the man. And he wrote this. Some guys have been so disrespected in their home, they just line dance all by themselves and have given up on the beauty of the dance. So let me ask you this question. When a man learns to lead properly, who is shown to be the graceful and beautiful one? The woman. The woman. Let me go back to my mom, back to 2010 before she passed away. I would visit her in South Dakota or bring her here. One of her favorite shows was this show called Dancing with the Stars. Any of you ever see this show? Is it still on today? I've never seen it, except I've been in the room with her reading a book while she's watching it. And I did ask her once, I said, Mom, why do you like this show so much? And she said, there's just something about watching a man and a woman moving in rhythm and harmony together that's just beautiful. And I started thinking about that because I don't know about you guys, but I grew up at dances. But we didn't dance together, not unless you call hanging on each other in a slow dance, dancing together. Right? I mean, did anybody go to junior high dances or high school dances? Am I the only one? Yeah. And so you'd go up and you'd ask someone to dance, and then you kind of... Because none of us knew how to dance. So you'd kind of dance. And then as a guy, you felt weird. So you'd see another guy, and you'd kind of like, hey, air guitar, and do that for a second, and then you kind of dance. Every now and then do the sprinkler, just to, let them know you had a few moves. We have learned in our marriages to dance singly, and we've lost dancing together. We've lost loving and respecting. And now we've become roommates. And there's nothing wrong with the roommate, but God asks so much more of us in a relationship. Anybody remember this song? R-E-S-P-E-C-T? Aretha Franklin made it popular because she sang it, but Otis Redding wrote it. Otis wrote it because this is what a man needs. The number one love language a man needs is respect, and he wrote it, and everybody's like, huh. Aretha sang it with her soaring vocals and strength and power, and she rewrote it for a woman. A woman needs respect, and everybody's like, yeah, yeah. Otis is over in the corner saying, but men need respect too. Men need respect as well. Many of you know this. I'm not going to spend much time, but you know the book, The 5 Love Languages. Do you know this book? Yeah? If you don't, this is a book that's worth getting. Now, it's about 30 years old. Can you believe that? But I still think it has some good premises in it. It has some good buckets in it. So here's the premise. The premise is that we all have a language that we speak. We have dialects that we use. You need everything, all 5 buckets that he uses. You have to have all of them, but that you have one that's primary over the others. So I was taking a group of college students down to Tijuana for missions once. I don't speak Spanish. And so I took the guy who we're working with into the marketplace to get supplies to feed all of these college students. The marketplace in Tijuana was just packed. Everyone's talking. I don't speak any English or any Spanish, or very good English at that time either. And so here's what's happening. Everyone's communicating with everybody, but I don't understand any of it. But true story, about 10 feet away, all of a sudden, through all the clutter, I heard someone speaking English, and I understood exactly what they were saying. Your spouse could be speaking love to you all the time, and you just don't know how to hear it because they're speaking with just a unique dialect. So he says there's 5 buckets. We can quibble over the buckets, but the first one is quality time. Everybody needs quality time together. The second one is words of affirmation versus words of tearing people down. Gift giving. I'm not a huge gift giver. I don't like to receive gifts that much, except here's what I've learned, is when I receive a gift, I now step back, and I think about that person at that time. I got a T-shirt. This is, Karen's not in here, is she? Good, okay. So this is new, this is free. So I had surgery a while back, and if you have a lot of anesthetics, sometimes it takes a while for your digestive system to work. I have one of my daughter-in-laws is an ICU nurse and now becoming a nurse anesthetist. And so she sent me a shirt with a stick man with his hands in the air saying, I pooped today, which is a celebration, right? So I saw this shirt and I thought, well, I can't wear this anywhere. But what I got great joy out of was setting it aside and thinking about my daughter-in-law was thinking about me and then took the time to order this shirt. There's something just about that thought. And then there's physical touch. Now I want to just pause on this because most men are like, amen, that's my gift. No, we're not talking about romantic physical touch. We're talking about just being in the presence of one another. So sometimes guys, you ever do this? You're driving along and your spouse reaches over and holds your hand and you're thinking, well, that's nice, but I need both hands and I really don't want to do this right now. But give them that moment. Or ladies, your husband sits right next to you. He has a whole stinking living room and sits down right next to you on the couch and and you're like, I'm hot. Don't do that. Give him that moment. Because here's the thing. And I need to say this. I have too many counseling appointments. You may be at a stage where physical intimacy isn't something that's top priority for you. But for men, physical intimacy leads to connecting. So even if there's not going to be physical intimacy, you need to find ways to connect. And that can be as simple as walking by and just putting your hand on their shoulder and just rubbing by and just saying, I love you. And you're like, no, because the moment I do that, it's going to be like, oh. And you're like, no. And that's okay. But somehow you need to start letting them know just by a physical touch, you're my man. I'm proud of you. I respect you. Because the number one way men speak, 2/3 of the men, is there number one or number two is acts of service. So very quickly you know this, but this is how this tends to play out. He comes home from work. He goes and changes clothes, gives you a hug or a kiss or at least a wave, hopefully. And then he goes into the garage and tinkers in the garage. And then he goes out to the patio and plays around in the patio. Then he comes in, gets his food, sits down, watches TV, falls asleep, and then goes to bed. And you say, you don't love me anymore. And he says, I don't love you anymore. I've been screaming, I love you. What I did is I came home, changed clothes, because you don't like it when I get my dress clothes dirty. And then I went into the garage, and I made sure that you had good tires and good air pressure. I made sure you had gas, because you hate putting gas in the car. You hate when gas smell gets on your hand. And then I made sure you had windshield wiper fluid, because no one goes through windshield wiper fluid like you do, sweetheart. And then I vacuumed out your car, because you love a clean car, but you also like to snack. And then once I knew your car was safe and in a good place, I went into the back patio, because at night you like to sit and relax out there. And I swept everything down to make sure there's no bugs or spider webs or anything. And then I know you like to watch the birds, so I made sure there's fresh water, and I knew that there was some feed in the bird feeder. And once I knew your needs were taken care of, I said, okay, now I can go relax. And you think, that's what you were doing? And he says, that's what I was doing. And you think, well, don't stop doing that, because I like it. But if you really want to speak to me when you come home, can we first just sit down across the table from one another? Because women like to be across the table. Again, I'm painting in broad strokes. Men like things side by side. That's why a man can go to the movies with you, come home and say, what a great date. And you're like, we didn't even talk. But we did something. But could you just sit down for 10 to 15 minutes across the table and tell me about your day? And when I say, how was your day, don't just say, fine. Tell me about it. Unpack it a little bit. Make me part of your life. I want to respect you, so let me know what's going on, because here's a key. I put down men when I wrote this on Thursday. I think this is true for men and women. I think sometimes we don't work on love because it's easier to manage. It's easier to manage our relationships and our marriages than to lead. And here's the problem. There just aren't a lot of leaders in the world. Everybody wants to be a leader, but can I tell you, there are very few real leaders. Most people manage. You go home, kids, get your homework done, get in bed. Wife, make the food. Husband, go mow the lawn. You manage. Leaders, that's difficult. Leaders make a culture. Leaders have to work hard. We put a culture where we understand mutual affection for one another, and communication happens here, and we can talk and share and grow together. Leadership, it models, it mentors, it pulls the best out of one another. Leadership is difficult. And part of the problem is because we've made work our identity and not Jesus. So I was talking to a friend the other day who's thinking of retiring. And he says, I don't know if I want to retire. He goes, because once you retire, you're kind of forgotten. You're kind of a nobody. Nobody talks to retired people. They don't remember what you did. And I agree. I understand what they're saying. But here's the thing. You all could have a secret meeting after church today and fire me. But I'm not going to walk around and say, I'm Creighton K. I'm the one that got fired from Faithbridge. I'm going to walk around saying, I'm Creighton K. I'm a son of Jesus Christ. God the Father loves me. I'm going to find another job. My identity is who I am in Jesus. And when you get your identity foundation in Jesus, I hope you're the best whatever you are. I hope you take great pride in it. But if your foundation isn't who you are in Christ, you have a hard time respecting and loving. So it all starts knowing who you are in Jesus. And so Paul was saying to the early church, to Colossae, when a man's respected, his inclination, if he is a good-willed person, is to love. And when a woman is loved and cherished, her inclination is to respect him. And I think what Paul is saying to Colossians 2,000 years ago still holds true for us here at Faithbridge. And God's people said,